Damn it, Jim, I'm an SAP Business One consultant, not a doctor. Hey guys, it's Mike Taylor, aka BattleshipCobra here, and today you can call me the Code Doctor. I wanted to do a video today to make your code in B1UP a little bit cleaner, more efficient. I've seen a lot of examples where people are using stores and pulling multiple pieces of data. But at the end of the day, if you can simplify with an SQL statement and use a keyword, you should go ahead and do that. So I'm going to show you today a lot of the different keywords and shortcuts that I use, including some .NET code custom stuff, so that you can simplify your code, use a single macro for multiple forms, and just learn a few things that maybe you didn't know. Before I start, I just wanted to say how excited I am about the NASA SpaceX launch. I watched it live on Saturday. It was amazing. I was on the edge of my seat. It's so exciting that we're gonna go back to space, go to the moon. You know, at this time, humanity needs to come together as a planet. There are so many things going on that we need to stop focusing on our differences and start focusing on our similarities. We are all together in this, truly. And even though there are issues, we can work through them, but we need to work together. I'm wearing my NASA shirt. I also have a SpaceX shirt, but super stoked about that. I hope you guys checked it out. If not, you could see the replays. We're back in space, baby. For all information about me, check out BattleshipCobra.com. I have an SQL for SAP Business One course and a Crystal Reports for SAP Business One course as well. All the information is on my site. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let's jump into the video. I may or may not be wearing a little bit of makeup. Realize that most TV shows and stuff, they give you a little bit of powder. So I just got my wife to put a little powder. A little pow pow. Anyways, maybe I have to think about it. So as they say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There is, that's a horrible saying really, pretty much only one way to do it, but there's a lot of different ways to do the same results in your macro code. And again, I've come across a lot of examples where it's messy and it's just pulling information from weird places, or maybe people weren't aware of some of these little tricks. So I wanted to show you a couple little examples with universal functions. I'll share my code below. This will be a little bit of a shorter one, so check it out. Some stuff that I didn't necessarily know at the beginning, and it will probably help you a lot. So we're gonna start today on a sales order, where I put all my examples. Firstly, I'm going to find an example. Okay, so my examples start down here. So first thing I have is dynamic syntax. This is the same syntax that you are used to with any formatted search query. Follows the same procedure in there. So this is your item UID, column, data type. You can also use the table name field, etc. So you're probably familiar with that, and you might already have used that. Right click, edit, function buttons. These things on the side are function buttons, in case you didn't know that, function buttons. I was against function buttons, but I think once you get a couple in there, I actually really like the consistency of them. Dynamic syntax, let's take a look at this. Universal function. Okay, so same as SAP formatted searches. So I'm gonna do a couple here. BP code. You can see that I use the 4.0.0. I'll show you an example. Click the button. BP code, Caesars, name. So it's pulling information directly from the screen. Again, using the same types of code as you would for a regular function. So I also used a row type, so you'd use 38.1.0, say if you were within the row running a query, but of course you can also specify the specific row of 1. So I just said, give me this field 38.1.0.1 for row 1, okay? So remember to push your view and system information. You have to have that on in order for you to see this. But you hold your mouse over, you can see at the bottom. This way. I'll try to highlight it. So you'll see 38 is the item, 1 is the column. The third variable here is the type. So typically it's 0. Only in certain situations do you need to change it to number or date, but there'll be details in the documentation there. And then this extra .1 is the row syntax. So with the row syntax, there's also a couple other little secret ones which I haven't found a lot of documentation for. I saw them in a video. The video now is gone, but you can use these at the end, .first, .last, .last minus 1 or whatever, or .selected. These have been extremely useful as well and are really good for adding a row. So you can say, put the item code in 38.1.0.last. So you could do like set 38.1.0.last, and then just put your whatever item code you want. For whatever you're adding. So it could be like freight or something like that. Last minus 1, once you've added the column, there's always that ghost line kind of at the end. So then once you've added it with the item, you can refer to it with last minus 1. Selected is kind of obvious. It's the one you're selected on. So these are actually really good. So remember, you have 38.1.0. whatever the row is, 1, or you don't need to have it, right? Obviously like the standard stuff. So let's run that again. Another thing that's really useful is this new line. So if you're doing a message box and you need a new line, like a carriage return, you just put new line in there. That's been really useful for me. Okay, so I have BP code. I'm just directly going for 4. 4, you can see it in the bottom. BP name, I'm directly going for 54. 54. Line number 1 item, I'm going 38.1.0.1. And that's this guy, 38.1.0 for the type, row 1. So this one is pretty simple. You should be familiar with that. Let's just run it again. Boop. Pretty standard. This is nothing that's really new, but you might not have known that. That might help you there. Now, the second one we have here is special keywords. So I'll click special keywords. Specified table, specific field, primary table, and table identifier. So let's take a look at what those are. Special keywords. These are from B1UP's B1UP special keywords. So there's a whole bunch here. These special keywords, these are amazing. So you have things from user, current posting period, username, database, server time, ID of the new document, but specifically the ones I'm going to refer to today are boy table and boy table identifier. So these are the ones that I kind of was referring to. I also use line count later. But you have a ton of these, including these incredible date, keywords. Insane, right? So I'll link this in the bottom and I'll show you how they work. I mean, you basically literally use those keywords and replace them. And the nice thing about B1UP is it's very literal in its translation. It just replaces whatever you're using with that data. So with this first example, there's a couple little tricks here. When you are using a particular macro on a form, you can actually call specific database columns directly without having to do any SQL statement. So this is one that's kind of cool. Ship to overwritten. Ship to OW. This just will output a yes if a user has overwritten this. Okay, so if a user overwrites a ship to address and saves this, you're going to now get a Y in this field in the database. Prior to this, you would have to, I've seen people go at store equals, select from, and then they're going to use the document number. You could just go directly to any of the database fields relating to this table or any of the other tables. So I could literally go, that bug where it moves the cursor. So I go $, or no $, ODR.doc entry. So I could just do that, and that will literally pull the doc entry. It's so easy. It'll pull exactly what you want, and it'll have exactly what you want it to pull with only a single code line. So you don't even need to have any sort of @stores or any sort of other SQL. It'll do it automatically for you. It's really, really helpful. So yeah, even just doc entry. Okay, you want to build on that. You have another one. So you can go a specific field. So we're going to go open the brackets, boy table. And if we look back at our example boy table, it returns the table. So you can use $, this is jumping around a little bit, boy table doc entry. So instead of specifying ORDR, remember I said it was really literal, it'll just go ORDR doc entry. So in this case, you can have this used for multiple macros on multiple different documents, and you can, you don't have to make a macro per document type. You can just do that wherever you want. Okay, so further to that, you have the primary table, again with the boy table, and then you have the table identifier, boy table identifier. So if you wanted .12, RDR12 for addresses, or you wanted something else, you can just use that as the table identifier. You don't have to do any string stuff with the main table. Incredibly useful. Go and check out these, all these documents. Again, I'm going to refer to it in the description below. So let's rerun it, and we'll just see again, special keyword. Yes, so you see it's been overwritten. Now it says yes. So again, I don't have to do any song and dance. Boom, it's just already there. That ship to overwritten column is not exposed anywhere in the UI, but I'm just pulling it directly. The doc entry 1040. If you remember in my previous video, if you go to any document, tools, changelog, and you have the object code here, this is actually the doc entry. Thanks, Matt. I already mentioned this in another thing. Shout out to Matt. Thank you. Wah, wah. So moving along, now we're going to get to a little bit more magic. Here is a .NET header button with a macro. Click the .NET header button. Boom. So we get form type 139. Pop open this universal function. This one has another layer in it, which I think is incredibly powerful. People don't necessarily know about this feature. So I have form type @form. You're going to say, well, that's not a variable, and that's not even declared here. Okay, that's a good point. Form mode @mode. Then I'm just pulling item 1. So item 1 is just this bottom one here, which you can also use. But again, this mode is an interesting way of doing it. I have row count @row count, and then I have Boyum's count, which is the line count of item 38. So this line count item 38 is actually in the special keywords. Down. Line count. So depending on what you want to do, line count is really good if you want to say, hey, are there any lines even in this document? No lines, no looping. You know what I mean? So the line loop thing is here in the special keywords, line count, and then the item. In this case, the item is the matrix, not the real matrix. So let's take a look at these other ones, because the other ones are the ones that have the magic behind them. So you say @form, @mode, row count, etc. The trick here is within a macro, right click and select .NET code. And you're going to see this little set of applets hidden beneath the macro coding. So let's look at a couple. And these are C# in this case. And this is actually pulling any of the SDK exposed elements. I don't, full disclosure, I don't know all of these, but if you're good with the SDK or you're a developer, you can use anything you want to pull pieces of information off of, I'm guessing, the UI. And so you can see column, form, mode, row count. In this case, I did a row count, and I just took 1 off of there because, SAP is going to have the item if you have 1 row, and then it's going to have that ghost row. So the row count -1 technically gives you the right number. So this is really, really useful. And remember, this one's a VB.net. You could use VB.net or C#. The other ones are C#. I'll put those in the description below. If you're like me, non-developer, you can use these. Some of these are already within the special keywords now. Row of the event. I don't know if they give you column, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, it's really, really useful because you could pull anything you want from any of the elements. So there's a lot of other things you could pull too if you had specific requirements. If you ask a friendly developer, they can help you. Thank you very much, Sebastiano, for helping me with these over the years. So I actually just combined those to show you the various ways of using it. Row count, the mode, and the form, etc. So let's take a look at that again. .NET header, click it, and boom, 139, form OK mode, and all this is just returned using those variables. It's really, really neat. The last thing I wanted to show you was the .NET, but in the row. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to click Tab. I just have this triggered off of item 1. So it tells you the row of the originating event, the column of the originating event, and in this case, it's giving you the information from the originating event. So let's take a look at that. I don't really recommend doing that way all the time, but this is just as an example. So here's the code. You can see that I have kind of similar to the last .NET. Right click, .NET code. Again, these are available in the description below. Row count, row. So I use row, I use column, and these just return the column of the event that was triggered. So you can say row at row, column at column. And then what I did was I actually put together dynamic syntax for 38.atCall.0.atRow, building on the SAP dynamic syntax. The thing that this does, which is incredible, is if you have to affect a header row in a macro, sometimes you need to put the cursor back into the matrix because you'll go out, affect a header row, come back, and now, maybe the cursor doesn't know where it goes or it goes to some random place. A lot of things you're going to do with the macro, especially in a matrix, you are not necessarily going to be able to put it back where you had it in order for the user to see the cursor go smoothly between two fields. So if you're going to remember to use freeze and unfreeze, you freeze it, do your events, affect your header tables, pop it back to the same field, and then it'll continue on from there with the validation. There's a little bit more to that. Usually what I do on the row is I'll set some indicator to tell it that you don't have to validate twice. But, just for the sake of argument for pulling information here, that's how you can do it. So you can do it this way too. Store the original location. I've just commented this out. You could put that there, and then you can use your focus to focus back to the location where the originating event was. So I use it that way, but again, you can use any of these combinations of the dynamic syntax to do higher level macros and get more out of your system with a single macro. I don't want to see all these repeating things. I don't want to see multiple macros per situation. You don't need to. So that sums it up. Just a little bit of dynamic syntax for you for a Monday. I want you guys to push your code a little bit further than you've been comfortable with it in the past. I want to see single macros for loading all documents. If you have one small scenario that's different, why don't you detect that form type and use an if statement? Within a macro, you could say if it's a delivery, don't do this chunk, or if it's a sales order, do that chunk, etc. Then you don't have to maintain a lot of code and a lot of different macros. It's nice and clean. Thank you very much for following me. Subscribe, like, and turn on that notification bell. If you don't come to YouTube very often, it'll send you an email when I do new videos. I'm doing videos every week, Mondays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Look for me then. If you have any questions, contact me at linkedin.battleshipcobra.com. Until the next time, see you later.